Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Soul Goals. My name is Dawn, and I have a wonderful guest today. Her name is Miss Stephanie Richardson, hailing all the way from Nashville, Tennessee, which is literally down the road from where I'm at right now, right?
Right.
We're neighbors. Stephanie is amazing. But before I get into her demographic and her repertoire and everything that carries along with that wonderful world and that work that she does, let's just talk a little bit about what the podcast is doing in year 3 that we are in right now. Each week, we are taking a different subject, presenting it to our audience at large. And we're having someone come on and speak about that specific subject in a way for us to connect with them, to relate to them, for them to share their story of how they have gone through it and navigated it. Hopefully, in an effort for us to maybe look outside of our box, maybe expand our perspective on how we are looking at things in our world. And maybe this perspective about the subject that we're talking about can give you a broader basis for how you're operating within your community, within your life, and everything that goes along with it. So that's the basis. But today, Stephanie she's become a really good friend of mine, actually through a mutual friend. And I'm so glad that Julie and Robin both suggested that I speak to you because it's been so beneficial. Stephanie is a business coach here in the Nashville, Tennessee area, but not just a business coach. Like she does one-on-one stuff. She does group things. She's a public speaking coach too, but she's also a keynote speaker herself. She's a founder of Unlock Your Potential. And what does that mean? What does business coach mean? Basically, it helps individuals and organizations kind of increase their performance overall, their leadership, their communication in general, and help basically achieve personal, professional goals that they may have for themselves. Like I said, individuals, which we've worked together, has been amazing. We did a 3-month stint together. It was so wonderful to be able to clarify my goals and get very specific on what it is that I needed to do, have an accountability person, and really hone in on what direction I wanted to head with my business. And that was invaluable. But also, the cool thing I love about Stephanie is you also were a former therapist. So not only are you bringing this business oriented stuff that you have done a lot of work and research and training in, but you're also bringing that human element about how the emotions interrelate to everything business wise too. So for me, that was so great. So great. You're also an author too, just FYI. Yeah, I just looked that one up too. Um, but all that being said, there's her street cred. But I want to talk about what we're going to speak today with Stephanie over. And I'm sure your work will kind of filter into the subject. We're going to talk about single parenting because Stephanie has been a single parent for a very long time. Your daughter is what we like to call grown and flown. She's living on her own, adulting beautifully in California, in LA, actually, with a wonderful job and a great career and everything that's going on with her. But I wanted you to come on and share that vulnerable piece about being a single parent along the way, the things you navigated now that you're on the other side of it with an adult child, and speak to our audience about how that was for you, what you walked through, what the situations were for you, and being transparent to share your path so that others may not feel so isolated, may not feel so alone, may feel like, oh my God, I'm seen. She gets it. Like somebody gets it when they feel like they're in the trenches all by themselves as a single parent, whether that's a mom as a single parent or a dad as a single parent. It can be, or a grandparent as a single parent, because, let's name it. It can be anything these days. So there you go. Let's go, Stephanie Richardson. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today.
So excited to have you on. And I think, like I said, I'm truly grateful that we have been introduced and we kind of came into each other's lives. I'm not going to lie, like your work has been really beneficial for me. It's been very grounding. And I look at you as that kind of person, that kind of grounding individual, which I think we all can really use somebody in our life. So if you don't have a grounding individual, like this is a good one right here. I'm just going to say, just from my personal experience. But
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. I'm sure that groundedness probably wasn't always a part of your life and how you got to where you are now. So let's talk a little bit about your journey as a single parent and when all that started, if you will, kind of going back to the beginning of you realized, okay, my marriage isn't working. Things are having to shift. I'm going to have to make some decisions about what direction I need to go for myself and for my daughter. So give me a little bit of insight into when you realized, hey, something needs to change for me.
It wasn't my decision to become a single parent. Her father decided to leave when she was about 18 months old.
Mhm.
And there was an incident that happened where we were not on the same page with some financial decisions. And he felt like he could make those decisions on his own. So he just left. And
Mhm.
so for the next 6 months, our divorce was going on. And then by the time she was 2, the divorce was final.
Mhm. 18 months old. Like, that's young. And that's, I would talk about being in the trenches and having that dropped in your lap and having to make some serious, like, what's going on decisions and what direction do I need to go?
Yeah, it was a really challenging time because I had been working in corporate America for 8 years as a therapist, as a director of a nonprofit, and I had taken maternity leave and then I went back to work. And then I was there for a little bit and decided I just can't do this and put my daughter in daycare every day. And so I had been working on building a direct sales business on the side for about 5 years. And I was making pretty pretty much what I was making at my full-time job on the side. So I had built it to where I had a considerable income coming in, but it was also 100% commission and
Mhm.
very unpredictable. And so I, at that point, after I had come back from maternity leave, decided to quit and just do my direct sales business. Well, it had been just a few months since I had made that decision, and then that the divorce happened. So I'm not only a
Lots
single
of
parent,
change.
but I'm also in a very unpredictable income with it just being solely on what my I'm producing it each month. And so that was very unnerving for me because I felt like here I have a house to take care of, a child to take care of by myself, and I have no consistent income knowing that I'm going to get paid a certain amount every 2 weeks. It was a very, very hard time in my life, to be honest.
Right. Lots of change. And it
Yeah,
sounds like all of that change happening all at once, that unpredictability that you're the unsure. Like you think about a job where you have to hustle and
yeah,
you have to, like, that's what you're doing. Throw in the mental and emotional situation that you're in the mix of. I mean, that's heavy. That's so heavy. Like,
yeah. And the other part of that was that we had a community around us when we were a couple, a community from neighbors and church. And when the divorce happened, that community fell apart because it was couples based and no one wanted to choose one of us over the other and say, oh, well, he's right or she's right. So nobody chose either of us.
oh,
And
wow.
so I felt very alone because the friends that I had had, the relationships that I had had that were some of my closest relationships were suddenly gone, were
Yeah.
suddenly yanked out from under me because of the situation. So that made it even more challenging, to be honest. And the environment where I expected to get support, my church, was not where I got support. In fact, one of the hardest days for me was going to church the night after he left. He left Labor Day weekend, and it was on a Saturday when he left. And I made myself get up and go to church the next day because I felt like I needed to be there.
Right.
I was a mess. And
Right.
you know how a lot of times the pastor will stand at the back of the room at the end and greet people, and he didn't know what to do with me. He asked me how I was, and I was very honest with him, where I think a lot of times people will say, "Oh, I'm fine," and they're really not fine.
Mhm.
And I said, "I'm not doing very well." I said, "My husband left last night, and it was all I could do to get here this morning." And
Wow.
he didn't know what to say. He didn't say, "Oh my gosh, let me grab somebody to chat with you or pray with you or whatever, support you." He just kind of blew me off as he
Mm.
was greeting other people, greeted me, blew me off, and went on. And so the environments that I had support around me at the time, the church, the people from the church, the small group, the couples, that all fell apart
Mm.
immediately. And so the places that I thought I would get support were not ones that ended up actually giving me support. So that was really, really hard.
Right? Well, lots of endings happening, obviously, then,
Yeah,
and unexpected, and, like, the whole thing was unexpected, obviously, from what I hear you saying. But then when you do need that support mechanism, when you feel like, okay, I'm just gonna say, I don't know that I could have gotten out of the bed the next morning. So, that right there is a testament to your sheer will to say, all right, I matter enough to get up and get moving. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm going to do something. I'm putting myself into action because I have to. I know that I have to. There's a piece of you that knew you had to.
right.
And then being met with another ending, I'm putting air quotes, ending, if you will,
Mhm.
by like this, because I mean, I almost look at that as being like it's almost like a death, basically. Like your
It
community falling
is.
apart.
It feels like a death. And I think that he didn't know what to do with me or what to
Mhm.
say, maybe because of inexperience, or I don't know, but I could think of a million different things he could have done differently,
Yeah.
and that I wish he had said, "What do you need?" Because he never even said, "What do you need?"
Yeah.
If he
Yeah.
had said, "What do you need?" I would have told him, but I knew I needed something, which is why I went, but I
Right.
didn't get what I needed, right?
Mm. How did the rest of that service go for you then? I
Well, this
mean,
was at the end when I was leaving,
when you
so
were leaving.
I just left and went home and just felt like, well, that's not where I need to be.
Okay.
I didn't feel like I stopped actually going to that church, to be honest with you. I sought out a different church
Mhm.
because I didn't feel like it was a place that was going to provide healing or support for me.
Yeah. And how hard is that to make that decision? Is something that has been so regular and
Mhm.
comforting and so secure in your life to be for that situation to happen and for you to go, "Oh my gosh, this just happened. What's going on?" It's a you have to do first of all, it's that realization, but then you got a grief component that goes around it because it's been
Right.
such a part of your life. And actually, there was something that a friend told me about her divorce the other day, and she was saying, you know, when we go through an ending of a relationship, whether it's a divorce from marriage, whether it's a separation, whether it's a friendship ending, whether it's a dating relationship that we've been really close with, that person is still existing. It's not like a death that we celebrate a milestone or we go, we are celebrating someone's life. When those years and those dates and those memories pop up for us,
Right.
it's a little bit different in the grieving process because no one is saying, "Oh, I feel so." It's a different understanding that goes along with grieving when the person is still there and the ending is so different in that capacity. And that made I just sat there and thought about that. I was like, "You know what? You're so right," because we all go on. Your husband's going on, or your ex-husband, I guess, will
Mhm.
be going on. You and your daughter will be going on. And what does that mean? You're gonna have to take action in some capacity to make yourself whole again. And what does that look like? What are the tools to get you whole again as now as a single parent with this huge responsibility of being the one
Right.
taking care of your child?
Yeah, we decided that she would live with me. So she lived with me, and then she would visit him. every other weekend. So that was our decision. There were times that was really challenging for her as well, and times that she did not want to go. And that made it difficult for all of us, I think.
Yeah. And how do you handle that as a mom? Because you want her to have a relationship with the person that bore her, right? You want her to have some kind of interaction with her dad on some level, whatever healthfully, if that makes any sense, whatever can be healthy for her life, right? That's that's the desire anyway. So how do you navigate that? You're healing yourself, you're grieving this relationship yourself, and the grieving of the loss of these communities that were so important and invaluable in your life. Now you're going, not only do I have to take care of this child and support her, and I also have to heal myself too.
Right.
And how do I make it so that I don't feel this huge resentment and this huge anger and portray that into her life? How do
Right.
I let her walk through the doors that she needs to walk through without me opening them and saying, go here, you need to do this, you need to do that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's a really big piece. I think that sometimes, I mean, I can attest to that, and I'm not divorced, but I can also tell you that there's been relationships and there's been situations in my life where I'm like, I really have to pull back my opinion and hold back my perspective, where my children have to grow into their own seeing and their own understanding of the experience as a whole. So tell me a little bit about that process for you as a single mom and as a newly divorced individual.
She did okay going back and forth between us until around third grade. And then she started having some anxiety about going and didn't want to go. And that was one of the most challenging parts for me, was sending her when the ex comes to pick them up and they're crying and they're not wanting to go, but you need to make them go so that you don't look like the person that's trying to keep them from going, even
Yeah.
though it was not the best situation for her. I always encouraged her to go. I put her in therapy, and that was helpful. And she wrote a letter to her father in the therapy process. And I think for a while he thought I was the one that was saying, you don't need to go to your dad's, right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't. It was her telling me I don't want to go. So she finally, through the therapy process, wrote the letter and got up the courage to give it to him, and told him in the letter why she didn't want to go and that it wasn't me. And so he finally got that it wasn't me, that it was
Okay.
her. And
Yeah.
it was his behaviors that made her not want to go. The lack of inconsistency and not feeling safe in some situations that she was exposed to and things like that. Those made her not want to go. And so at some point, when she was probably around 12 or 13, she didn't go every week, every other week. She went whenever she wanted to. And he agreed to that. And I think that was helpful, because then it was when she sought it out and she was interested in going. And I think that helped their relationship with it not being forced. But there were many times when she left when she was younger, when she was panicking when he came, that I would just cry when she left, because what do? You
Yeah.
have to send them, and they don't want to go, but you have to send them. And as she got older, she started to see some patterns that I had noticed in our marriage. And she noticed them, as you said, kind of coming into their own and forming their own opinion.
Yeah.
And there were some behaviors that he demonstrated that were the types of behaviors that I saw. And I would not speak negatively, but I would just say, this is not this is him, these are his behaviors. I've noticed those same challenges and patterns and behaviors myself, and it's not something you're doing or not doing. It's just who he is. It's him as a person, because I didn't want her to blame herself for his not showing up at a school function with an excuse about why he wasn't there or whatever, and taking that personally and feeling like it was her. I wanted her to always know that it was his choice to do those things, and it didn't have anything to do with her being a good child or a not good child, or being lovable or not lovable, or whatever it might be, that it was just his behaviors and his choices. And so when we would talk about it, it was always in terms of, yeah, I understand that you're upset about that. I understand that you're disappointed in your dad not showing up for that function, or telling you he's coming and not showing up, or not coming to your college graduation, or whatever it might be. But you know the pattern, right? And I would just take her back to the pattern of the behavior, and not the person as a bad person, but the pattern of the behavior, kind of separating the behavior from the person, if that makes sense. That's probably my therapy background coming into play.
Well, as you're saying this, I'm like, what a blessing to your child that you have that background, because that's a lot of perspective that I think so many people in the middle of hurt and anger and processing have a really hard time deciphering and kind of pulling apart, and almost like zooming out to be able to see like the bigger picture for all of it. And that doesn't take away your helplessness as a parent. Like, that's what I hear you saying. It's just that I don't think your awareness about what's going on and parenting your child in that emotional space still doesn't take away that helplessness as the mom that's sending your child to your ex's house, because you know that this is what you have to have. You got to have the faith that it's going to matriculate and it's going to be okay in the end. And the behaviors and the patterns will be exposed and will be seen, as long as you're being consistent and creating safety for your child, like as that stability. But let me just tell you, when I say that out loud, that's exhausting. You know what I'm saying? Because you're doing your work to heal and doing your own work to be an individual, and dealing with everything that you just spoke about from the community standpoint of the lack of that and the falling apart of that, and the falling apart of like the way the marriage went. And you're having to provide for your child too, physically. So there's so many different elements that roll into that one ball. And it's, being a single parent obviously is not for the faint of heart here, right?
Right. Definitely.
I just hear that exhaustion, and I don't know, maybe that's not the case now, because your daughter you guys are adults, you're great friends, and things are much different, right? But in the thick of it, when she's in third grade and having those struggles with anxiety, when she's going into therapy and coming out with these different issues, saying, probably asking you what does this mean? Or this is what's going on, and sharing things with you. And then age 12, 13 gets to that point where she can start to see a little bit more about what's going on, and then has real, has to then decipher what is right for her and what is not right for her. Like, how do you as a parent sit with all of the responsibility and still take care of yourself as a single parent?
I found that I needed to surround myself with a new community and seek out that new community. And a lot of people are fortunate to have family members that will help out. And I really didn't have consistent family support. And so I found it elsewhere. And so one place that I found it was in my previous neighborhood where I lived before, where I live now. And those people in that neighborhood became like a second family to me, because my daughter was young and that's the home we lived in at the time. In that neighborhood, there was a grandmother type figure next door to us. And sometimes I would cook for her, and then she would watch my daughter while I went to work for my direct sales job. Or I had another friend who, my daughter was very artistic, and she was an artist and musical and did painting and things like that. And so my daughter would hang out there sometimes and feel like that was encouraged by her being there. And she had a daughter that was a few years older than mine. And there were times that I would need her to take care of my daughter for a moment. Or I had another neighbor who was an older man, and he was another grandfather figure, and his wife had passed away, and he would come over and eat dinner with us and play board games and things. And so that community around us became a support system. I had a neighbor next door on the other side who mowed my yard for a year and a half, because
Wow.
I had an 18-month-old, and you can't leave an 18-month-old in the house
Right?
to go mow your yard. You just, I
Right.
mean, what do you do? I mean, practically, what do you do? So he just said, I'll mow your yard. And so he did. So I just had this community around me, and I gave to them and they gave to me. I took pets out. I mowed yards for people. I cleaned gutters. I did all kinds of things for them. And in exchange, they helped me with her. And
Mhm.
so that community was really important. I
Mhm.
switched churches, and I started a single moms Bible study there. And so there were several single moms in our group. And what we ended up doing a lot was trading out childcare. So if one of us needed to go to the grocery store, run errands, or needed a break, we would watch the other's children, and then vice versa. And so we just became a support system for each other.
Great
So
idea.
I had to find it because I wasn't getting it from my family. It wasn't like I had a parent that would say, oh, just bring her over here anytime. That wasn't the case. And
Yeah.
so I had to find where I could find it. And my neighborhood, a lot of people, go in and out of their homes, and they never even speak to their neighbors or really know them. But
Right?
that support group that came from that neighborhood was just amazing. And like I said, I paid it forward to them as well, and they did the same for me. And it was hard when we moved, because I was leaving that community that had been so helpful. When we left there, she was in the 8th grade. So it was, she was much older and didn't need all that daycare type thing or watching her
Mhm.
type thing when she was younger. But that was really important. So I think community is something that single parents need to make sure that they have around them. And if you don't have it, if your family lives out of state or whatever the case might be, just to create it, just create it, find other people and create it so that you can support one another.
Right, and I love what you said about the fact that like, you took action and started a single mom's Bible study. It's such a relatable cause that, you can pull other people that are in the same boat, and when you have that relatability with someone and with a small group of people that know what your evening has been, if you've been up all night, or that know that you have been up all night, but you still gotta go to work the next day, and or this is what I'm dealing with my ex at this point with my child, and how do I now, like, to get feedback and to bounce your scenarios off of. I mean, that's, we're all here to relate to each other and to feed and pour into each other. But I also love what you said about, you have to go searching for that community if it's not readily there. You got to look for it. You have to be engaged in doing that process, because if you don't have that luxury of having family nearby, whether you're married or not and you have a small child, I mean, let's talk about needing support in general. But when it comes down to those critical points where I think it's not just the physicality of showing up, but it's also the emotional and the mental piece of being there for you. I mean, that feeds you just as much as them, coming over and playing a board game with you, or coming and maybe mowing your grass when you weren't able to. That physical act, just it carries on. It has this really beautiful chain effect that goes on with it. So tell me a little bit about what you did, deep personal work as a single mom, and separating yourself from the identity of being the one that has to take care, the primary caretaker for your daughter. Is it or was it, maybe it still has a piece of there in there, was it difficult for you to go, all right, it's me time. It is important that I take care of me so that I can be this whole person for my daughter because she's relying and depending upon me. And how did you do that? If that was a piece that you believed in, and what were some of the things that you decided were helpful for you to get you to that whole point for your daughter?
One of the first things I did was go through some divorce care classes and be in a support group for that, because I felt like that was helpful to me to process all of those emotions and be around other people that were going through the same thing. So that was one of the first choices that I made, was to go through that. And then journaling has always been, when I say always, I mean since I was 5, I have journaled. And so I
Okay.
will write a lot of what I'm thinking and feeling. And so that time for me of journaling and reflecting, and maybe sometimes it's venting in your journal or whatever it might be, because maybe you don't have someone to talk to. And I think that's the piece that I felt the most, was just feeling very alone in every decision that I had to make, whether it was deciding what elementary school to put her in, or what repair needs to be done at the home, whatever might need to be done. There's no one else to bounce ideas off of. There's no spouse to talk to. I mean, you can talk to a friend or a family member, but there's no one in that tight family unit to really help you in making those decisions. And so I read a lot. I read a lot of books on parenting, on finances. I read so much to really pour into myself. I read a lot about goal setting and being successful, and just things that I felt like I needed to do to pour into me. And then I also put her in Mother's Day Out when she was younger, because I needed a break. I needed a time that I could get work done without her here. And she enjoyed going and was thriving. So that was something that I did for me, but also for her, to give me that break. Because when you're a single parent, you never get a break. You
Right.
never get a break. You're always on. You're always the person that everything stops with you. You're the person that takes them to the doctor and the dentist and every event at school, and does the paperwork at night. And there's nobody else to do any of that or handle anything. And so that, putting her in that, gave me some time to really take care of myself and get a break and be able to refuel, because I needed to refuel so that I could be at my best for her. I went to the gym. I would take care of myself by getting massages, just different things that I could do to really help me. But mostly I would say hiring or working with someone else that was maybe a little bit ahead of me in different areas of my life. So for a long time, I had a friend that I felt like was just really spiritually grounded. And she and I would meet and chat once a month. And she had multiple kids and she was married, but she still gave me grounding every month. And then there was another friend that I had that did the same. And it was just, and hers was more along business lines. So just seeking out those, again, those people in my life to pour into me so that my cup could be filled so that I could pour into my daughter.
Yeah. Do you think that's, I mean, thinking back to that, how hard was that for you to make some of those decisions? Or did you feel like you got to a point where you're like, I have to do something. So this is what's going to happen." And did you feel relief when you stepped into some of those different behaviors and those different plans that you just spoke of? Or did you feel, were there pieces of it that felt like, "Oh my gosh, I feel kind of guilty because I should," the should monster, I like to call it, the should monster come out. "I should be doing more with my daughter. I shouldn't be thinking about myself because I need to put all my focus on raising her and my emphasis needs to go there because of this time and season we're in." Was that a hard thing for you, or were you like, was there a genuine sense of relief that accompanied it?
I don't know that I felt relief, but I felt support. And I never felt guilty about it because I was very intentional about spending lots and lots of time with her. And many times I would have friends who were married who would say, "I have no idea how you juggle and balance everything that you juggle and balance. It doesn't make sense to me." And I just was very good at planning things on my calendar, planning time for me, time for my daughter and me to do activities together, because there weren't a lot of finances extra for us to go and do things. So I would look for things in the community for us to do that were free. And there was a resource that I used, and I would use that calendar religiously every month and find things for us to do. And I don't think she ever really knew that that's what I was doing, that money was tight, because we went and did so many things together. And it was just, I used the resources that I could find to help me, to give her, to the illusion to her that we're fine, everything's fine,
Yeah.
because I didn't want her to feel like, "Oh, well, we don't have money for that, or we're stressed," or but or anything like that. Although it there were lots of times where I felt the pressure of being the only breadwinner, for sure.
Yeah.
And especially when she went to college and I didn't get any support from her father on her college tuition and all of that. The weight of that, I felt the weight of that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't, did I answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think too, though, but what I'm hearing you say is, and what I have heard my friends say that have been in divorce situations and in single parenting situations, is that they have found that their kids will react and respond to however we are reacting and
Right,
responding in general, whether you're married or single with a child.
right,
So your daughter understanding that, like, they just want to be with you, like she just
right,
wants your presence there. So I mean, I hear you saying that intentionality and being resourceful and being organized in your intentionality and
mhm,
resourcefulness is super important to making sure that you're doing the best that you can. And then, look, we're not perfect people. We're not going to do it right all the time. And there's going to be bobbles that are going to come up and you're going to go, "Oh, doggone it. Why did I do it that way? Why I should have thought that out." Here's the should monster again, right? "I should have done this. I should have thought more about that." Was any of that ever a piece of you? Or did you feel like you gave yourself enough grace to say, "Okay, I understand what's happening. I have awareness about this, and this is where we are. I'm doing the best that I can." Or were there pieces that where you like were hard with yourself and didn't cut yourself that grace?
I feel like I had this theme running through my brain of I'm doing the best I can. And because the I'm just a very resilient, resourceful person. And for example, when she was growing up, I heard about consignment sales, and I would consign all of her clothes from the last season. And then whatever money we made, we would take that and buy new clothes. So basically, we never had to go and buy new clothes in the store. We would just go to the consignment sales and buy the next year's clothes. and it became fun for her to go and shop and that kind of thing. So I learned to find ways to make things happen so that it didn't feel uncomfortable or tight for her, or that she didn't feel that we were different. And don't get me wrong, we did okay financially, but it would have been easier with a second income, obviously, and
Right.
not having everything on my own. But we always did it, and I gave myself grace and just knew that I was doing the best I could. And I would say to myself, I can do hard things. I can do hard things. That
Yeah.
was just like one of my mantras I would tell myself over and over when I was faced with a new situation with her, or having to learn to repair something at my house that I'd never done before. And I would take her alongside of me and teach her things so that she could do those things. And I'm very proud of the fact that as she became older, she was able to do things that I think a lot of girls wouldn't be able to do, because she did them alongside me, and she
Mm.
saw, okay, I can take a bed apart and I can sell it on Facebook, and I can get a new one in and I can put it together by myself. And yeah, maybe 15 years old, but I can do that, so things like that, because of I spent time teaching her. I was very intentional about teaching her to be independent, because you don't know what somebody's situation is going to be, and you can't always hire out for things or have the money to hire out for things. And so I've just tried to give myself grace and then try to find the resources to make things work, whether it was looking on YouTube to figure something out,
Yeah.
asking for help from a neighbor, or looking for resources in the community, such as the consignment sales or things that were going on that were free or whatever. That's just what we did with her growing up, all until her teenage years. And then she decided she wanted to run a little business. And so when she started doing that, she started making her own money. And then that was helpful, because then she could use it for things that she wanted. And I'm sure it's because she grew up with seeing that in my home, that that's something she wanted to do. So I was homeschooling her at the time. We had a situation in elementary school where she was bullied, and well, middle school, I should say. And she asked me if I would homeschool her. And I thought, I don't know the first thing about homeschooling, but I'll figure it out. And
Yeah.
so we did for a couple of years. And that was during the time frame that she started her business. And so we would go to farmers markets and she would do her business. And there were just so many life lessons that came from that, on how to run a business, how to talk to customers, how to sell, how to, keep inventory in your budget. And there were so many things that came from that that I feel like set her up for success as an adult.
Right, right. And you think about too, though, I want to go back to the fact that your resourcefulness and your resiliency as a single parent and in the role that you were is really what showed her that she's capable of that. You know, that actions are really what speak. So I will go to my grave saying that. Your actions are so predominant in the world, and how we put ourselves out there in the world for other people to glean from and to learn from and to take from. It's not just our words. I mean, words are super important, but the action beyond the words is the next level for me, what I've understood and from what my experience has been. It's just a next level, basically. And it's that learning, that innate learning. And like Stephanie, you weren't afraid to show up. I hear you being authentic and
Yeah,
not afraid to show up. Like if I make a mistake, my kid's going to see that,
yeah,
and I'm going to back up. I'm going to reboot. I'm going to figure it out. And I'm going to be resourceful, because First of all, I understand it's just me, but also I don't hear you saying I'm in a victim mentality because it's just me. So I think that's really important to talk about a little bit too.
Yeah, I don't feel like I acted like a victim. There were times when I felt like I needed to draw a boundary with her, especially as she got older and I could talk with her more like an adult and just say, I can't take on any more today. you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I,
Honest. You're being honest.
I can't do anything else today. I need a break from you right now. I'll come back in a few minutes and we'll talk about this. But
I mean, that's authenticity and honesty right there. Like,
instead
what
of
a
yelling or whatever, and I mean, she's seen me cry, she's seen me be overwhelmed and just say, I'm
Mm,
overwhelmed right now, I can't do anything else right this second, I just need a few minutes and then I'll be okay, and then we can talk about whatever.
yeah.
Or so I just was very open with her and honest about everything because I wanted to have that kind of relationship with her as
Yeah.
she got older, that she felt like she could talk to me about anything. And
Mhm.
so it I didn't sugarcoat anything, but I also did, I expected that there were going to be challenges as she got into her teenage years and even as a young adult. And there were times that, I've had to confront her about things, but I think my therapy background helped a lot with that too, because sometimes I could do that more easily with the poker face,
Right?
where, a lot of people get so emotionally out of whack.
I'm waving my hand. This is me. It's so hard. It's so hard. I mean, like, my husband was talking about it this morning, like, through our individual therapy, and we're talking about the fact that we gotta catch ourselves before we get to flashing
Right,
red light. Like,
right,
we're on green light, we're going along, but something triggers us and the yellow light pops up, and it's
right.
like, "Bring," and then we have got to put the brakes on,
Yes.
before that light turns red and all hell breaks loose. And then communication is out the window,
Yep.
no matter whose relationship, whether it's me and him, it's me and my daughter, it's he and our daughter, it's
Yeah.
whatever it is. But I mean, how important do you think it is for you as a single parent in your experience and for single parents in general, whether it's a single mom, a single dad, to show that vulnerability to your child? How important do you think? Like, do you feel that there's maybe and maybe it takes into account your background in social work and therapy. Is there a point where you feel like kids can understand that and can accept that and it's okay, or there's a point where it's we have to be a little bit more formidable and we can't show that deep space? Is there a maybe an age or a specific time that you can go, or is it just wide open?
I think that there are smaller things that you can show them as they're younger, but it's it takes them being emotionally mature enough to understand that at that point. So, I think that as they get older, you can be more vulnerable as far as the emotions and things like that, whereas when they're younger, you have to maybe kind of tone it down a little bit and say, mom is upset or mom needs a break right now. And then when they get older, you might be able to say, okay, I'm overwhelmed, right,
Yeah.
and I
Yes.
need a break. So I think you can change some of your language depending on the age of the child and the emotional maturity of the child. And that's going to be different for each child.
Yeah.
I felt like my daughter was very emotionally mature growing up, and teachers would tell me that about her as well. That I forget she's six. Her theater teacher said, I forget she's 16. She doesn't act like a 16-year-old. And I believe it's because I was just real with her about what
Mm.
was going on with me. Not that she was my source of support or anything. It wasn't like that, but just that I was real about my emotions and how I was feeling. And I think it's good for kids to see that, because especially in today's world, they see, and there's this pattern that I've seen with her age group and younger even, that it's not okay to feel emotions. It's almost as if they feel like they can't feel emotions because social media portrays everything as good most of the time.
Right.
And so everything looks perfect and great and wonderful. And, you do come across some people that are raw and authentic and will tell things like they are, but they need to be okay to feel the hurt or the anger or the happiness or whatever it might be. And to make that okay, they need to see that we are able to do that, right?
Yeah.
And single or married, like I've seen some married couples who would never argue in front of their kids or let them know that anything was going wrong in front of them. And I don't know that that's healthy, because I'm not saying you should have a, shouting match at each other, but I also think you have to role model how you want your children to handle disagreement or compromise, and show them those kinds of things, right? And
For
so
sure.
you're teaching them those skills by the way they interact with you, whether you're single or married, either way. They need to see those things. So if it's behind closed doors and they don't get to see that, they don't know how to do that as an adult.
Yes, right. It's giving them what they can receive. What I heard you say earlier is that as children age and as they mature, you have to be able to meet them where they are with
Mhm.
that behavior and with your language with them. But like, I love what you said about, and I think it's so true that the social media age will dictate to us that we have to be, this wonderful little piece. We can't feel our emotions. And like you said, I have come across a few that are pretty raw, but it's really the exception and not the rule.
It
And
is.
I think it can really portray this false sense of identity and who we are, quote, supposed to be versus who we really are and who we really want to be. And then if you take into the account of your upbringing and the experiences that you walked through, the fact that she had only you to rely on and the things that she's dealing with in her own therapy through anxiety and through the bullying that she went through in middle school, and then all of the different pieces that went along with aging process for her with a single parent and all of the stuff with your relationship that goes into play too. Like, you think about not being able to feel your emotions and being told that that's not okay, that it's a detriment to feel your emotions, is or to see that conflict, to
Mhm.
understand what conflict resolution, what disagreements look like, but what are disagreements are going to be here for the rest of our walking and living
Right.
days. It's just because we're not all the same person. And so that disappointment or disagreement that we have with someone else, how do we walk through that? I love that you said that, because like you said, married or not married, I think for our children to see that and witness that is important. And like you said, you have to have some parameters on it depending upon where their
Mhm.
maturity level is and what they can receive.
Mhm.
But man, then I just think about the single parenting position of it for you. And I go right back to the beginning of the resiliency that you have to be in that role when there's so much heaped on you. That physicality, the emotional space, the mental space, that the spiritual space, all of the things that you are trying to feed into your child, but yet still have an autonomous space for yourself.
Mhm.
How challenging that can be to be in this role, but yet it's dancing one foot in and one foot out is what I hear you saying, and having to have that, yeah, just having to have your head wrapped around it. Like, and now your daughter, I love that your daughter is, how old is she? Do you mind me saying? Is she
She's 23.
okay? So she's 23. She's thriving, right? She's
Mhm.
living on the other side of the country, doing so wonderfully. But we look back to her experience. Wow, what I like, do you look at her and go, I'm just obviously you're so proud of her, right?
Mhm.
But you look at where you guys were when she was 18 months old and think,
Mhm.
this is where we are now. Like that's a huge full circle moment, right?
It is. And I've always been very, very proud of her. She's just been an amazing kid growing up, and we've always been very close. And it's funny because some of my friends and neighbors have said, "Oh, I hate that she's on the other side of the country from you because you're so far away." But I raised her to fly, and I want her to fly. And I think that's hard sometimes for parents to let go and figure out what your role is once they become an adult, and know how you can best show up for them in that way. It changes over time. I remember when she came home from college the first semester for Thanksgiving, and I was cooking something for her and washing her clothes and just trying to take care of her like we would do. And I know you could probably relate to that. And she said, "Mom, you don't have to wash my clothes. You don't have to cook for me. I've been doing that on my own now for a few months."
Oh,
and I was glad, but also, you kind of want to be needed sometimes a little bit too.
yeah. Like
So
how do you dance in both of those
right.
arenas?
It's figuring out how to be when they need you and when they don't need you. And I think I've said to you before that just asking her when she comes to me to say, "Okay, do you want me to just listen today? And do you just need somebody to vent to or talk to and just get your ideas out, or do you need me to give you advice or my opinion about something?" Because sometimes they don't want our advice or opinion. Sometimes they just need a safe place to say whatever it is they want to say, express frustration about something. And so I've learned to ask that question, and going into it, to know what my role needs to be with her in that conversation. And I know that there are times that she needs me because she'll FaceTime me, and then I know that she needs me, and we'll talk about whatever it is. And then there are times she wants to celebrate. She FaceTimed me yesterday, and we were celebrating something for her with a promotion and a raise. And so, you're excited that they need you and they think of you to share that joy and excitement with as well. But it feels different when they're an adult, and you're still there, and you're still able to help and give suggestions, but you also don't want to overstep any boundaries and allow them to learn and grow on their own and to
Mhm.
make their own decisions. And so phrases like, "Well, you might consider dot dot dot," or "Have you
Mhm.
thought about dot dot dot," instead of "You need to do this." So
Yeah.
a lot of it is the wording of how I say things and asking questions to clarify what my role needs to be in that conversation, if that makes sense.
Um, totally makes sense. Yeah. Asking people in general what it is that they need is like the big caveat that I think we forget. And when your children get to a point after you've raised them and you're now in this adult standpoint with your relationship, it's completely different than what it was 10 years ago as a parent, then I think it's probably even more important to ask them because it's changed and you're so intricately wound with this child that you've been raising on your own for 18 years before they left home for college. And you're still raising them. You're still a part. You're still the role of mom is still you. It's still there, but that shift and the different responsibility. I had a really good girlfriend talk about being an empty nester and going, my role has now changed from chief officer to like assistant producer on the side. Like it's not like my chief officer standpoint. I've had to take a step down in my role as a
Right.
parent. Like, how does that feel to you, thinking about all the time that you've invested in your child and the time that you guys have spent together walking in this world and walking this life together, that just the two of you from a single parenting and a single standpoint in that household, knowing where she's at now? I mean, bittersweet, obviously, but how have you processed that for yourself personally? Do you still feel like sadness around it? Do you feel, obviously you feel very much joy because like her sharing her experience yesterday with you about her promotion and raise, but like what does that do for you individually as a person? Because your identity is, this is where you've been for so long.
I think it's where you have to figure out who are you in the time that, who are you now and what your role is now. And so figuring out how to live my life without the day to day with her, right? Because I don't talk to her every day. I don't see her all the time. I can't because of the distance. And college helped prepare us for that because she went away pretty far away to college. It wasn't like she could come home every weekend. She wasn't close. So it helped prepare us for that. And yes, there are times that I miss her because I don't get to see her every holiday. And so I've had to create that life for myself without her. And so, for example, Thanksgiving, I didn't get to see her, but there were family members here that we celebrated together, but I was able to FaceTime, and she made her own Thanksgiving dinner. And I was proud of her for making her own Thanksgiving dinner. So it's just figuring out who you are without them and what your role is going to be in your own life and what you want your life to look like. And some of that might be support from family that are local, or it might be friends and another community group. Like there's some other single friends that I do things with, and we support each other with holidays and things like that, because you can't be with them all the time, right?
Right.
And so that has been good for me to, again, seek out community, seek out girlfriends, seek out other people who are in situations like me, so that you don't feel so alone, because you can feel alone, especially as an empty nester and they're living their life and they're thriving, and that's what you want. You want that, but there's still that time that you miss them, and you want to, you wish you could just drive 30 minutes and see them or something, and you can't.
Right.
But one thing we did was we planned, and this, but your listeners won't. We planned a trip together in last May. We went to Greece together for 8 days. And so just having that time with her and being intentional about planning that time together has been helpful. And so we will continue to do that. And that's how I feel like I'll also get that time with her, is just planning vacations and trips together where we can experience things. We've done that her whole life. We've been to 13 countries outside of the US, and that's why I feel like she is so independent, and because we've done a lot together. And so that's why she's not afraid to be far away. That's why I think she'll probably live in Europe at some point in her life. I just feel like she will do that. And that's good. I'll go visit, and I'll have my thing, but we'll still have our time together. So figuring out who you are without them, how your life looks without them, and then when can you be intentional about planning time together?
Yeah, I feel like we just had an amazing business coaching session right there. Who are you now? Like that's life. What you're talking about is this beautiful metaphor for the changing seasons of our world, and who are you now, and the rediscovering of those different seasons, and the unpacking of our stuff, and the unfurling of our layers and all the things that have made us what we are up to this point. And then you go through a shift and you go, all right, where am I now? What are my priorities now? What's my goals now? Who, like you said it best, who are you now? Yeah, it's the figuring out who are you now, what that role looks like for you and what it looks like for your child too, because there's another, there's someone else that's still there. Even though she's grown and flown, she still's going to need you. Like she obviously still loves you and still needs you, you know?
She
So,
does. I'm going to see her next week, and I'm so excited because I haven't seen her since about 6 months. And it's funny because I asked her if she wanted me to cook for her, and she said, "Oh yeah." Of
oh,
course. So, things like that, you go, okay, I'm needed, and there are
yeah.
things that I can do to show love and support, and it's just different when they're an adult, but it's different.
Yeah. The mom cap is different than it
Yeah,
was 10 years ago,
yeah.
15 years ago, 20 years ago. Totally. So you got to roll with the punches. Absolutely. If you could say one thing to our listeners, maybe that someone that's in the thick of things, struggling with the just made the decision to either leave or just have had the rug pulled out from underneath them with community, and they're dealing with being a single parent, whether it's single mom, single dad, a grandparent raising a child, whatever it is, and they're just in the weeds with things, what would be a piece of information that you could give them from your experience that really worked for you or that was really valuable for you, that maybe you learned along the way, or that maybe someone gave you that was super beautiful and super beneficial for you and your path?
I think just knowing that you're going to be okay, you're going to come out of this on the other side and be okay, is helpful because you're in the middle of it right now and you may not believe that. You may not believe that it's going to get easier or it's going to be okay, but it will. It will be okay and you'll get through it. I feel like the support is critical, whether it's through other single parents that you connect with or through your church or neighborhood, school, wherever you can find that community of support, especially if you don't have family surrounding you. Support is going to be really critical, that community to help you.
Yeah, totally. And I agree with you on that 125%. And even if you're not a single parent, support,
Hmm.
community, such a big deal. Such a big deal. And uncovering who you are now in this next season of life, you know? Always a good thing to do. Hey, oh gosh, Stephanie, I'm so glad that you came on today and you're so open with sharing your life, sharing your world, sharing your experience and everything that you walked through so vulnerably, so transparently. I think that's, showing up with authenticity is how we relate to other people. And we show other people that it's okay to have those feelings, like kind of what you just said. Like we're allowed to have feelings. We're allowed to walk through them. And it doesn't always have to be perfect and it can be
Right.
messy. But you know what? You can come out on the other side. And look what you can do. Yeah, when you're resourceful and you take action in that way, you just
Hmm.
put one foot in front of the other with that community support. Look what you can achieve. Really, really beautiful things.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I hope you have a wonderful visit with your daughter and a safe trip there and back.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. And have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your weekend as well. Okay.